One minute ago, shock confession, Diddy tied to Michael Jackson's death. Kanye speaks out in a federal courtroom, now gripped by tension. Kanye West, under oath, issued a declaration that sent shockwaves through the gallery and ignited a media storm. The acclaimed rapper and producer accused Sean "Diddy" Combs, one of the most influential figures in the music industry, of being complicit in the death of pop icon Michael Jackson. Kanye did not hesitate. He named names. He cited specific dates. He detailed connections with a clarity that froze the jury and left observers stunned. "I'm not here to talk about music," Kanye stated firmly. "I'm here to talk about murder." According to West, Diddy was not only a music mogul, but a central figure in what he described as a hidden power network, a group of industry elites capable of orchestrating careers and, when necessary, endings. His testimony, reported by inner-city press, implicated Fahim Muhammad, now head of security for Diddy, as a key operative in this alleged conspiracy. Muhammad, a former member of Michael Jackson's security team during the final months of the singer's life, was hired shortly before Jackson's death in 2009. At the time, he was in his early 20s and had just graduated from Sacramento State. Kanye questioned how someone so inexperienced was entrusted with the safety of one of the most iconic and vulnerable celebrities on the planet. The allegation cut deep. Kanye claimed Michael Jackson had feared for his life. In a voicemail played to West by the Jackson family, Jackson whispered, "Tell them it's Puffy. He knows. He's here." Kanye cited this as evidence that Jackson believed he was being targeted, and that Diddy, known also as Puffy, was behind the orchestration. Michael knew, Kanye stated plainly. The courtroom, already tense from weeks of troubling testimony in Diddy's ongoing federal trial, was silent as Kanye recounted the connections between Fahim Muhammad and Diddy. According to Kanye, Muhammad had long-standing ties to Combs well before his assignment to Jackson's team. His role, West argued, was not protective, but controlling. He went further. Kanye drew a chilling parallel between Jackson's fate and his own recent experiences. He claimed that the same handlers who attempted to institutionalize him, particularly citing his former trainer, Harley Pasternak, were part of the same network. Pasternak had allegedly threatened Kanye with psychiatric confinement if he didn't comply with industry expectations. Michael had his own Harley, Kanye said. Only he had the keys to his house, his medicine, and his life. West alleged that the Jackson home's security system inexplicably failed on the night of Michael's death, and that security footage was erased. These failures, Kanye suggested, were not coincidental. He tied the Diddy tunnel footage, which federal agents reportedly failed to recover during raids, to similar patterns of deletion and cover-up. The rapper also mentioned the lawsuit filed by Lil Rod, which names Fahim Muhammad as the enforcer behind a criminal network linked to Diddy. Kanye emphasized that the lawsuit accused Muhammad of making people and problems disappear. "First Michael Jackson," Kanye said, "then me." Who's next? This question hung in the courtroom unanswered. Kanye then shifted focus to a broader pattern, one that implicates the music industry itself. He listed artists who, in his view, met suspicious or untimely ends after challenging the system: Prince, Whitney Houston, DMX, Lisa Left Eye, Lopes, Amy Winehouse. "They silence us," Kanye said, "and they smile while doing it." The courtroom sat in stunned silence. One juror reportedly teared up. Diddy, sitting rigidly at the defense table, did not react, but those watching noted the tension in his jaw, the tightening of his grip on the table's edge. Kanye's words continued to land like grenades. He pointed to the suspicious absence of Michael's long-term security team in the weeks before his death. Fahim Muhammad, he said, was inserted through industry connections, tied to Diddy, not chosen by Michael. He described the Wharton School's invitation to Muhammad as a guest speaker, as a red flag, citing potential ties to military intelligence. "What kind of bodyguard speaks at Wharton?" Kanye asked the jury. "One with a mission, not a gun." West suggested that Muhammad had access not only to Jackson's schedule prescriptions and personal fears, but also to his final communications. They knew what Michael was saying because they were listening, he said. With every word, Kanye seemed less like a performer and more like a whistleblower. I'm not crazy, he said. I've been silent, but not anymore. His final statement before the judge called recess rang through the courtroom. Michael's death wasn't a tragedy. It was the cleanest business move Sony ever made. With those words, part one of the testimony concluded. What had started as a routine day in court now resembled something closer to a reckoning. As court resumed, Kanye West's tone grew sharper, yet his demeanor remained eerily composed. The rapper didn't backtrack. Instead, he doubled down on what he now called a systematic purge of artists who resisted industry control. With the jury watching intently, Kanye expanded his list of victims. Prince spoke out about masters and ownership. He died alone in an elevator. He described Prince's years-long battle with Warner Brothers over control of his music catalog, and how the artist's final appearances became increasingly cryptic. He knew, Kanye said. He warned us all. Then came Whitney Houston. Kanye alleged that she too had tried to speak out. According to his testimony, Houston was aware of industry parties that she later feared could ruin her. She said too much, Kanye added, and suddenly she was erratic. That's how they do it. They paint you unstable so no one questions your death. Kanye transitioned to Lisa Left Eye Lopes, who days before her death in Honduras had recorded a video claiming she was being followed. She said spirits were warning her, Kanye told the court. Then she drove off a road with no barriers. Gone. DMX, Amy Winehouse, all mentioned, all categorized by Kanye as outspoken, non-compliant, and ultimately eliminated. You don't have to believe me, he said. Just look at the pattern. The prosecution attempted to object, but the judge allowed West to continue for now. The gallery remained locked in attention, phones silenced, pens paused. Then Kanye revealed the voicemail. He claimed it was Michael Jackson's final message played to him by a Jackson family insider. He's here. I know he is. They're trying to take everything. Tell them it's Puffy. Kanye paused. The words seemed to drain the air from the room. He then described Michael's final days, isolated, stripped of his original team, and surrounded by unfamiliar staff. Industry plants, Kanye called them, with security badges. He once again zeroed in on Fahim Muhammad. Why, he asked, was a 20-something with no high-level experience suddenly managing the security of the world's most famous entertainer? And why did Michael's security cameras malfunction that night? Kanye demanded. Why was the footage erased? The comparisons between Jackson and himself grew more direct. Kanye reminded the court of his public conflicts with Adidas, Balenciaga, the Grammys, and even Jay-Z. He connected his own psychiatric threats, like the text from Harley Pasternak, suggesting he be taken back to Zombieland, to a broader method of silencing through intimidation. They told Michael, "If you go against us, you won't make it to the stage." West implied Jackson had received similar warnings. He quoted a shared message allegedly related to both artists: fall in line or disappear. At this point, Diddy's legal team moved for the testimony to be stricken. The judge declined, but instructed Kanye to stick to first-hand knowledge. He nodded. Then the most damning point of the day. Kanye claimed that Fahim Muhammad helped clear Jackson's hard drives and wipe video after his death. He called Fahim the eraser, and now he said the eraser works for Diddy. He cited the Lil Rod lawsuit again, reiterating that Muhammad was allegedly the one who made problems disappear. First Michael, Kanye repeated, then me. Who's next? Then came the unexpected. Kanye pointed at the courtroom. Some of them, he said, sweeping his hand toward the press and the legal teams, are still in this room. Reporters scrambled. The judge demanded an order. But the implications had already spread like fire. The allegations had shifted. This was no longer just about Michael Jackson or even Diddy. It was about an ecosystem, a system designed to protect profit, not people. A system Kanye alleged had developed methods to control discredit or remove artists who defied them, handlers, threats, surveillance, psychiatric tactics, financial manipulation. The industry doesn't need you to die, Kanye said. It just needs you to be quiet. But if silence doesn't work, death is an option. Gasps rippled through the gallery. This isn't a conspiracy. This is corporate policy disguised as coincidence. Court reconvened with tightened security. Reporters' passes were double-checked. Cameras remained banned. But whispers spread through every hallway. What would Kanye say next? He didn't disappoint. Kanye began with the phrase, "This is not about Diddy anymore. It never really was." He claimed that Diddy was a cog in something far bigger, a front man for an enterprise that stretches beyond music. We're talking about politicians, tech execs, military contracts. Think it's just entertainment, you're wrong. According to West, the entire structure of the entertainment industry was designed not to elevate talent, but to filter control. You're let in, not because you're good, but because you're useful. Kanye alleged that certain music deals, fashion endorsements, and personal relationships were assigned, not earned. They manufacture moments, they arrange marriages, they tell you who to feud with, and if you disobey the handlers, step in. He described a meeting with a major streaming executive in 2019. He said to me, "Your numbers don't matter. What matters is how manageable you are." Kanye then detailed how after he refused to comply with corporate demands during his Adidas fallout, a mental health blitz was launched against him. They called me unfit. They tried to 150 me. They said I was dangerous for not being compliant. He displayed screenshots of text messages from Harley Pasternak, the trainer he previously accused of threatening to have him institutionalized. One message read, "If you don't behave, I'll have you drugged back into Zombieland," the courtroom murmured. The judge allowed the image to be submitted into evidence. Kanye claimed this strategy of psychiatric intimidation had also been used on other stars. He named Britney Spears and Amanda Bynes as victims of what he called guardianship suppression. They don't need to kill you. They just need to call you crazy and take control of your assets. He turned back to Michael Jackson. Michael wasn't crazy. He was cornered. According to Kanye, Jackson's attempt to regain control of his catalog was the tipping point. Once he challenged Sony, the countdown began. West then presented a breakdown of Sony's music ownership structure, linking their holdings to shell companies and joint ventures. "Follow the paper trail," he said. "It leads to one thing: control." He claimed the infamous final tour, it was never about a comeback. It was a setup. Push him until he breaks. Film it. Monetize death. Kanye asserted that Michael was worth more dead than alive. He cited projections showing billions in posthumous revenue. You don't kill the artist, you invest in their martyrdom. Then he dropped a final bombshell for the day: internal AEG emails, allegedly leaked by a whistleblower. One message reportedly said he doesn't have to survive the tour. Just opening night. Gasps again. The judge called for an immediate sidebar. Court recessed shortly after. In the hallway, reporters were already filing stories. Diddy's legal team declined to comment, but the prosecution looked rattled. Outside the courthouse, fans of Michael Jackson began gathering, and inside the question was no longer whether Kanye was credible, it was whether the system he described could withstand the light. Day 4 of testimony began not with Kanye but with an unexpected development. Members of the Jackson family requested to speak. Jermaine Jackson, brother of the late pop icon, stood in court. His voice was measured but resolute. "Kanye is not lying," he said. "Michael told us things we were too afraid to repeat, until now." He confirmed the existence of the voicemail Kanye mentioned. "We have it. We kept it private for years. We didn't want to believe what it meant. But when we heard Kanye say the words exactly as we remembered them, we knew it was time." LaToya Jackson issued a statement through her legal representative declaring, "Michael didn't die from addiction. He died from control, and the people responsible are still walking free. My brother was used, pushed, drugged, and discarded like a broken tool. We've stayed silent long enough. This testimony rattled the defense. Diddy sat motionless, but his lawyers exchanged tense glances. The energy in the courtroom shifted. There was no longer skepticism, there was fear. Diddy's attorneys attempted to challenge the admissibility, but the judge overruled. "This is now a matter of public interest," she said firmly, her voice echoing louder than before. "We will not suppress testimony that could be relevant to the truth." Kanye returned to the stand after the Jackson family spoke. His tone was quieter, but the content no less incendiary. "This is what they're afraid of," he said, "when victims talk, when patterns are exposed, when people connect the dots." He revealed that following Michael's death, he had been approached by unnamed executives who told him, "You saw what happened to the king of pop. Stay in line." He said the message wasn't a warning, it was a threat, and it wasn't subtle. "I was told straight up, play your part or disappear." West said he had been offered immunity protection money silence if he stopped talking about Jackson's case. "They wanted me to disappear into wealth," he said. "They thought I could be bought off. They were wrong. I chose the truth." He described a pattern of celebrity surveillance hotel rooms, bugged calls, monitored emails, deleted remotely. "They don't need your password," Kanye explained. "They own the server. They're watching you before you even know you're a target." The court was then shown evidence from a private investigator hired by a former Jackson staffer. The report documented multiple instances of suspicious activity around Michael's home, including unregistered security personnel arriving the day before his death, and servers being removed by individuals not listed on payroll. Kanye's attorneys introduced the findings into evidence, presenting chain of custody logs, timestamps, and redacted personnel files. The documents showed that someone had replaced Michael's usual staff with anonymous hires from outside agencies, some of whom had links to Diddy's business network. A former maid from Neverland testified under subpoena. She recalled overhearing a hushed conversation between security members the week of Michael's death. "He knows too much." That's the problem. Then came the emotional turning point. Paris Jackson. Michael's daughter submitted a handwritten statement through her legal proxy. Her message was quiet, but raw with memory. "I was too young to understand back then," it read, "but I remember my dad crying. I remember him saying he felt trapped. I remember the fear. And now I remember the voice on the voicemail. It was real. It's always been real." The jury was visibly moved. One juror covered their face. Another leaned back and sighed, their eyes wide. Even the judge briefly paused before continuing proceedings. Prosecutors requested a recess. Diddy's team sat in stony silence. No rebuttals were issued. Outside the courtroom, it was no longer just press. Activists, artists, former producers, and fans gathered by the hundreds. Some held photos of Prince Whitney Amy DMX. Others carried a banner that read, "Who's Next?" A former Sony distribution manager came forward anonymously, stating that he had seen internal memos referencing high-value artist transition plans. He said it wasn't worded like a hit list, but it sure felt like one. By late afternoon, multiple federal agencies were seen entering the courthouse. Unconfirmed reports indicated that an independent task force was being formed to review the circumstances of Michael Jackson's death with new testimony. That evening, the courtroom itself was sealed for inspection. Tech specialists were called in to examine evidence submissions, hard drives, and security documents. Forensic auditors were seen reviewing royalty statements and catalog rights connected to Jackson's posthumous earnings. A redacted spreadsheet presented in a closed session and later leaked showed suspicious transfers totaling over $73 million between offshore accounts within 2 weeks of Michael's death. Another witness, a former accountant from Sony Music's legal department, came forward with an encrypted thumb drive alleging that it contained death benefit incentive contracts. The contents, according to early legal filings, included clauses that directly profited corporate partners, if an artist's catalog was liquidated upon premature death. Meanwhile, statements from artists who had once been close to Michael began surfacing. A taped message from Quincy Jones was played in court. In it, he said, "Mike knew too much. He wasn't paranoid, he was aware. And there's a difference." Even Janet Jackson, long silent on the subject, issued a short press statement read aloud by her attorney. "My brother lived under surveillance. He died surrounded by strangers. That isn't a coincidence." And so the trial stretched into the evening. Emergency lights glowed on marble walls as legal teams scrambled to request recesses, gag orders, or sealed motions. But the story had already escaped the courtroom. The world was watching. For the first time, the court wasn't just a courtroom, it had become a stage for a cultural reckoning. And the story was no longer about what Kanye said. It was about everything the system had tried to hide. What had begun as a single testimony now triggered a national tremor. On the morning of Day 5, the Department of Justice confirmed an internal review had commenced into the circumstances surrounding the death of Michael Jackson. Congressional aides leaked that oversight committees were now requesting documentation from Sony Music AEG Live and Bad Boy Entertainment. Meanwhile, Kanye West returned to the stand for a final full day of testimony. This time, he wasn't alone. Two former artists affiliated with Diddy came forward anonymously via pre-recorded video depositions. Both shared nearly identical stories, promises of success followed by coercion, emotional abuse, financial exploitation, and finally attempts to silence them. One woman, her face blurred, said, "I was told I could be the next big star, but only if I agreed to sign a contract that would put my rights under oversight. I asked what that meant. They said, 'You'll find out if you step out of line.'" The second, a male R&B singer from the early 2000s, claimed that his studio was bugged and that personal videos were used to blackmail him into compliance. "I couldn't leave," he said. "Every time I tried, someone reminded me of the footage, of what they could leak." Kanye sat silently as the videos played. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The room had changed. When asked by prosecutors to elaborate on the deeper structure behind this alleged machine, Kanye used the term, the pyramid. "It's not about who's at the top," he said. "It's about who protects the top. Lawyers, accountants, stylists, personal trainers, handlers, enforcers, security, everyone has a job, and none of it is music." He described how artists were deliberately isolated. "They take your family out. They fill the space with their people you think you hired, but really they report somewhere else." West then described how Jackson, Prince, and others had tried to break this structure. They bought catalogs. They spoke up. They stopped being profitable as slaves. So they had to become profitable as martyrs. That line made headlines before the court was even dismissed. Kanye shifted to finances. He revealed that he had previously turned down a $60 million buyout from an unnamed conglomerate money that he alleged was offered to keep him from investigating or speaking about Jackson's death. "They told me I could retire early," he said. "But when I asked what that meant, they said, 'Go dark, stay quiet, fade away.' That's not retirement. That's a muzzle." One of the most shocking moments of the day came when Kanye read aloud a text from a former executive at a top music label, "You're next if you don't delete that post." He said the message came after he publicly referenced handlers and control contracts. The court called for a break. Diddy's attorneys requested dismissal. The judge denied it. Instead, she called an emergency evidentiary review, citing potential criminal obstruction. Meanwhile, a surprise witness, a former sound engineer who worked on Jackson's This Is It rehearsals, came forward. He testified that Jackson had repeatedly requested copies of his live mic feeds, only to have them disappear. He wanted to document everything the engineer said, but someone always pulled the plug. He added that in the final week, Jackson seemed convinced his room was bugged. Michael started whispering, even off stage, said he could feel someone listening. Then the bombshell. The courtroom was shown unreleased surveillance footage, a grainy but chilling video taken from inside Jackson's rented Holmby Hills mansion just days before his death. The video, leaked from a former staffer's backup hard drive, showed unidentified men entering a restricted part of the house in the middle of the night. None of them were registered on the security logs. Kanye didn't comment. He just closed his eyes. Outside, chaos brewed. Hashtags surged. Commentators on CNN and MSNBC now debated not whether the conspiracy was real, but how far it reached. The dominoes weren't just tilting, they were falling. Day 6 opened under a media frenzy. Barricades lined the federal courthouse. Dozens of camera crews swarmed the steps. Protesters and supporters held signs quoting Kanye's testimony. Inside, a silence settled as the court resumed. Kanye West returned for the final segment of his testimony, now less of a witness, more of a detonator. He began with a question: what if Michael Jackson didn't just die? What if he was made to disappear? Then came the timeline. Kanye laid out the final year of Michael Jackson's life with meticulous detail. The signing of the This Is It tour contract with AEG, the sudden change in his medical care, the replacement of longtime staff with industry-assigned personnel, and the mounting financial pressure despite his catalog's worth exceeding $1 billion. He showed that Michael had begun steps to audit Sony's royalty payments. According to leaked emails, he had written, "I want full accounting. I own 50% of Sony ATV. I want to see where every dollar goes." Weeks later, he was dead. Kanye's voice did not shake. That wasn't a coincidence. That was retaliation. Then he pulled the court back to the voicemail. Kanye briefly addressed Dr. Conrad Murray, the physician convicted for involuntary manslaughter in Jackson's death. He was the fall guy, Kanye said, a disposable pawn in a much bigger game. He claimed that Murray was used to deliver the fatal dose, but never truly knew who was orchestrating the setup behind the scenes. He played it again. Michael's voice was faint, panicked. "They're in the house. Tell them it's Puffy. He knows. He's here. Please protect the kids," gasps. Audible crying from the gallery. Diddy's defense team objected, the judge overruled. Kanye pointed to Fahim Muhammad again, identifying him as the common thread, Michael's final bodyguard, Diddy's current chief enforcer. Fahim wasn't hired by Michael, Kanye said. He was placed. And that's the difference. He revealed that after Jackson's death, Fahim was listed as the intermediary for the immediate seizure of 2 hard drives that later vanished. Security camera footage from the Holmby Hills mansion was corrupted, overwritten, or outright missing. Then came the corporate trail. A forensic accounting team hired by a whistleblower submitted records showing $73.6 million transferred within 3 days of Jackson's death, routed through shell companies tied to AEG Live Sony affiliates and investment firms connected to Diddy's holding groups. It was a liquidation, Kanye said. They harvested a catalog. Next, he brought in testimony from a former Sony lawyer who had anonymously submitted a sworn statement. Internal memos discussed contingency asset retention in case of catalog transition triggered by mortality. The implication was clear: someone expected and planned for Jackson's death. West connected this to what he called a pattern of asset-driven elimination. He mentioned Prince again, who had also demanded control of his masters and was found dead in an elevator weeks after warning close friends they're watching. He cited Whitney Houston's final hotel stay, where she allegedly voiced concerns to Clive Davis about being followed and drugged. Hours later, she was dead in a bathtub. He mentioned DMX, whose final interviews included cryptic warnings about the people surrounding him. He invoked Amy Winehouse, whose father had publicly questioned the role of industry pressure in her collapse. "This is not a coincidence," Kanye said. "This is a model." He claimed the industry had transformed artist death into business strategy, a clean exit plan with maximum monetization. The courtroom remained frozen. Diddy sat pale, fingers clenched. He whispered into his attorney's ear. The team scribbled notes. But they did not deny the voice, not once. Then the prosecution stood. They submitted an internal memo from Bad Boy Entertainment labeled Client Stability Protocol, detailing directives for behavior correction containment response and external narrative control. In the margins, Fahim M. The judge reviewed it, then allowed it into evidence. This court will not ignore the convergence of corporate structure and personal harm, she said. Kanye asked the court for one more moment. He pulled out a black folder. Inside were signed affidavits from 2 former estate managers who had worked with artists posthumously. One had managed the post-death rollout of Michael Jackson's estate. The other had worked on Prince's. Both claimed they were instructed to maximize public sympathy spike catalog streams and avoid legal inquiry into the deaths. One of them told me, Kanye said, the real money starts once the heartbeat stops. Outside, the Department of Justice announced it was launching a federal investigation into the posthumous management of artist estates. A congressional subcommittee on corporate misconduct scheduled emergency hearings. AEG, Sony, and Bad Boy declined to comment. Stock prices for all 3 dropped by over 9% within 24 hours. Inside the courtroom, the jury sat motionless. Then Kanye finished, "This isn't about me. It's not even about Michael anymore. It's about power that thinks it's untouchable. And maybe, just maybe, that ends today." He stepped down. Reporters flooded the hallway. A senior investigator with the IRS was seen entering the judge's chambers. A court-martial escorted Fahim Muhammad out the side door, not under arrest, but under pressure. Within hours, news broke that subpoenas had been issued. Grand jury preparations were underway. Kanye West had not just testified, he had detonated a silence. He had peeled back the curtain. And what stood behind it was not a man, it was a machine.